This is called Slow Down. In a clearing in a forest out behind the village dump sat a little old man on an even older stump. He whistled while he whittled, and he whittled quite a while. And every time he heard a robin, he would cock his head and smile. See, he'd sold his house in town and moved out in the woods because the town was growing fast and the growing wasn't good. Ever since they started fracking and the money came around, it had turned into a strip mall instead of a small town. Now, on a path in that same forest walked a man with furrowed brow. He wanted to be happy, but he wasn't certain how. He made a lot of money, but things were pretty grim. His neighbor, who was younger, had a bigger truck than him. And the neighbor on the other side, as quiet as a mouse, must have got a friggin' raise because he built a bigger house. The town had kept expanding and the taxes getting higher, and the man felt he was slipping from the pan into the fire. "My goodness, I've a visitor," the old man smiled and said. "What brings you to the forest with that frown upon your head?" The man said, "It's complicated. I'm not sure where to begin, but I don't know where I'm going, and my soul is wearing thin." "Slow down," said the old man. "Take a breath and look at me. You don't have to pave the world. You don't have to bridge the sea. Well, there's a flower, there's a tree, there's a woodchuck, there's a bee. These are things you need to truly be happy. I'm glad you're making money, son, but take a look around. You're gonna miss this town if you don't slow down." He said, "The building and expanding, well, they've gotten out of hand. They say we need more jobs, so they go and frack the land. And the constant noise and traffic, the compressors and the trucks, they swept this town under the carpet just to make a couple bucks. Everybody's in this contest for expensive, fancy things, multi-million-dollar homes, brand new cars, diamond rings. I don't need no status quo to tell me who I am. Leonard Skinner said it best, son. Be a simple kind of man." The man stood there for a minute. Then he gave a mighty sigh. Then he dropped down to his knees and, like a child, began to cry. And it all made perfect sense. He needed meaning in his life. And he couldn't wait to run and tell his children and his wife about this little old man up in the woods outside of town who had saved his life by giving him permission to slow down. And that was years ago, though it seems like yesterday. The town became a strip mall and the frackers moved away. And the million-dollar mansions that were reaching to the sky stood silent and abandoned because the taxes were so high. But way up in the forest, back behind the village dump, sprang a tiny little town around an ancient locust stump. It wasn't very fancy, but it had the cleanest air. It was quaint and quiet and honest, and there were lovely people there. See, that man convinced his family to make a mighty switch, to spend more time together and less time getting rich. And other people followed who saw just what they had, that sometimes less is more, and sometimes more is sad. And that man, he took to whittling as he got up there in years, and he whistled while he whittled, and he drank a couple beers, and a smile lit up his face when a young man came to him and said, "I don't know where I'm going, and my soul is wearing thin."
I've had to stand behind a microphone like this. You always, when you go to do these thank yous, you always leave somebody out, honest to God. It always happens. My mother, I'm sorry, Mom, I did this to her once at one of those things where you really are supposed to thank your mother. She's forgiven me, or at least she doesn't haunt me as much as she used to. So I want to just offer first, before I say some other things, I want to offer a blanket thank you to everybody who's here for coming out, for your support. If you're a Kickstarter supporter, if you're one of those people that pre-ordered the book, thank you so much for doing that. You made all of this possible, including this lovely poster up here and a lot of other things. Just sort of a blanket thank you, because the support has been just amazing. I'd like to thank, too, before I get into some specifics about the book, I'd like to thank Jason and Justin for agreeing to let us do this here tonight. This particular facility has we don't call it the Hector Wine Company, a lot of us, we call it the Hector Community Center. And what a great community center that you can get a glass of essence here and things. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal. I am going to single out just a few people before I talk about the book. And the first, and if you've already downloaded the book, which many of you did yesterday, and you read the acknowledgments, which is a section that people usually don't bother to read, but you should read this one. I want to acknowledge the person who probably has certainly as much to do with getting this book to where it is, and the print version will be out in about 8 to 10 weeks, certainly as much as I did, and that's Sylvia Fox. She's the resident Zumbista of Hector, Zumba teacher, and really...
Hector Wine Company.
When I finished the book, I finished the book about June, and I said, "That's it. I don't ever want to see this again. Here, it's yours." She picked it up. She found the publisher. She arm wrestled some people a lot bigger than her to get this thing out the door. And just a few days ago, when I was looking for razor blades any place I could, because of the last minute things that were happening, she said, "It's a good thing you never went through childbirth, because you can't turn back here, buddy. You can't say no now. You can't, you know." So I didn't, and my wrists are still okay, so we've gone on from there. She's going to want to say something in a minute too, but I want to mention a couple of other people. Where is Rexy Bardaglio? She's here somewhere. There she is. Yes, Rexy. Rexy jumped in very late in the process at the last minute. We needed a real thorough professional editing and proofreading of this project. I won't tell you what mistake I made in the book, but I made a real, it was bad. She caught it. She caught it. I'd also like to point out a couple other people. Where's Yvonne and Joseph? They're here someplace. Yvonne and Joseph in the back. Gas-free Seneca, right back here. Gas-free Seneca's influence on this book is very strong, although they're not in the book per se. They will be in the sequel, but I'll talk about that later. Joseph's talking about Ben Affleck to star him in the movie or something. But they had a big influence on this because of their fight against the Energy Project. This is where you all go, boo. The fight against energy is part of what galvanized my interest in writing this book in the first place. And last, and this person isn't here, but she's acknowledged in the book, but I just want to point out her name, and that's Sandra Steingraber. Yeah. She's kind of a local heroine for most of us. One of the things that she said in an interview with Bill Moyers, she said that it's time to play the Save the World Symphony, and that everybody has an instrument to play in the symphony. You just have to find your part and you play it to the best as you can. And I was most of the way through that book when I realized that's why I was writing the book, was because my instrument was the keyboard. And I was using it as a keyboard and not as a club to hit people over the head, although at times I kind of wanted to do that. So, but those are people I think that really need a special recognition. Sylvia, did you want to take the microphone for a second?
Just for 1 second. Don't go far.
Just for the one.
I just wanted to thank everybody for their patience I am the promoter of the book. I am relentless. You've probably noticed, and it's not something that I feel like doing, but I believe in the project, and so you see Zumba and you see the book on Facebook. That's all I do, and if I see you anywhere, I'm giving you a postcard and telling you to send it to someone to share the book. And I do believe in the project, but if you can all help get the word out to read this book, you will be doing everybody a great favor. What Josh Fox says is if you understand hydrofracking, you are against it. And we just have to get the word out.
As I say frequently up on the pickleball courts, nice job, Fox. There's another reason that we're here tonight, drinking the fine wine of the Hector Wine Company, and it isn't just the fine wine or the hospitality of these guys. It's because the Fracking War, the book, not the war, the Fracking War started right here. It started right about where Justin is standing. This happened about a year ago. I was in here with Sylvia and a cast of thousands, as it always was on Friday nights. And someone came in from another local winery called Hazlitt 1852. Some of you may have heard of it. It's just up the street. Someone came in, one of the wine servers there, and she was, I'll just say, angry. That's the best I can put on it. She was beyond belief angry, and she was beyond belief angry because 3 representatives of the gas extraction industry had come in and were talking at the bar about how they were going to be drilling anywhere they wanted to, they were going to be doing anything they wanted to, and she said, "No, you're not. This is Hector, and we protect Hector." And they got into a huge Donnybrook over the whole thing. Well, I saw her maybe an hour later, and she was still smoking mad. And the part about it that I found interesting was the reaction of many people, some of whom are in this room tonight, some of whom I know carry guns in their cars, loaded guns in their cars. And I thought, my God, this could turn into a shooting war. And I went home and I started writing notes immediately about shooting war, because I thought the people of Hector are going to protect Hector from fracking and from these people. And that was the genesis, really, of the book. I thought, I don't know, we're going to really have a war now over this, but it sure seemed like a real possibility. And so that's what got me started with the idea of the book, and it was right up there, not where Justin's standing, but about 10 feet now from where he was standing. I wrote the book in Mexico this past winter, which was a great place to write. It was pretty hard to write about the ice and snow that appears in the book from there, but I used my imagination, and it seemed to work just as well as if I'd been here knee-deep in the snow. If you can put up with it, I'd like to read a little bit of this book. When I get done reading, I know that many of you have asked me, because many of you have asked me again tonight, they said, I really want a book. I want the print copy. I'm not an electronic person. I was helping one of my neighbors today. I don't know if Billy's still here. He probably still lives someplace. I was helping one of my neighbors download the Kindle app to his computer and everything today so he could read it. What we're going to do, I'm going to read a little bit from this, and at the end of that, I don't know what the system is to do this, but...
Nico's got the raffle. We're going to raffle off the manuscript.
This is a manuscript. It is the book. It's got a few little notations in there. Most of them are not obscene. Most of them are just editing notes. But at that point, we're going to raffle it off.
It does have a couple of errors in there. This could be worth a lot of money.
Someday. But this will go to somebody tonight. So you'll have an actual print edition you can take a look at. And of course, I lost my place now that I have to go back to. All right. Let me just set the stage just a little bit. I picked a scene that happens in a winery somewhere on the east, on the side of Seneca Lake. So I don't know if you can imagine such a scene, but that's where this takes place. It's a far stretch. It is a far stretch, isn't it? There's about 3 characters in it, so you should be able to keep these people straight. Lindy Carlson opened a bottle of Oscar's Boot, a wildly popular Riesling produced by the Lakeside Winery on the east side of Seneca Lake, where Lindy worked as a self-described wine wench, pouring tastings for tourists. Her nickname at the winery was Mao, pronounced Mao, short for mouth, because she was often so argumentative with customers, so much so that winery owner Oscar Wilson would have fired her if she wasn't so popular with most of the locals, who treated his winery like a neighborhood tavern. Plus, she was his niece. And after she hurt her knee playing basketball at college in Buffalo and dropped out of school, Oscar hired her for the tasting room, knowing it would make his younger sister very happy. Having a gorgeous, nearly 6-foot-tall, 22-year-old blonde behind the plank was also a good business move. Lindy took a tiny taste of the Boot Riesling to make sure it was good, twirling it in the glass to check its legs. It was nearly 6 p.m., closing time on a Sunday night. But with Boot selling for $39 a bottle, she had strict orders to make sure no tourist ever got a bad sip. There were only 2 people left tasting, a young couple from New York City who had braved the snowstorm that had kept most people away over the weekend. She considered having a full glass of Boot for herself, but corked the bottle instead. She heard the pickup truck coming into the parking lot off New York Route 414 fast, throwing gravel before she saw it. It told Lindy that either someone was arriving who had already been tasting too much wine elsewhere on the wine trail, or some gas bags were coming in. Gas bags was the nickname given to the roughnecks hired by a half a dozen natural gas exploration companies who had been sniffing around the area for several years, buying up leases in anticipation of using the technology known as hydrofracking to get at the natural gas-rich Marcellus and Utica shale formations thousands of feet below the fertile farmland used mostly for growing grapes. The gas bags were working on several plots of land to the east, closer to Cayuga Lake, moving in trucks, tanks of toxic chemicals, compressors, big drilling rigs, all the while laying gas lines and building sludge ponds for what they expected to be a bonanza of natural gas, most of which would be eventually shipped to China. GES was already doing some drilling that the company spokesman had labeled exploratory, which had all of the rural neighbors up in arms. The week before, Lindy had refused to serve a trio of gas bags who came in filthy from their job site and reeking from beer they had already consumed, probably in the company truck on the way to the winery. That caused enough of a row that she refused to pour the wine, and she pretended to call the sheriff's office. When they saw her calling, the 3 gas bags stormed out of the parking lot, stopping just long enough to urinate on a tourist's car tires before roaring out on the highway. "Hello, hello, sorry, we're closing," she shouted as the 3 men in Grand Energy Services uniforms pushed in roughly through the glass doors. The young couple moved aside to let the men have a clear path directly to the center of the bar behind which Lindy stood. Tasting time's over. Sorry, boys," Lindy said, the smirk on her face offering just enough hint of defiance that the shortest man in the group made a big show of tapping his wristwatch, holding it 6 inches from Lindy's nose, his hand balled in a fist. "You know, I paid a lot of fucking money for this watch. And you know what? It works great. And it's 10 minutes before your closing time, sweetheart. 10 minutes. We'll have 3 glasses of that stuff by your hand." The young couple from New York, who had been considering buying a bottle of Oscar's award-winning Merlot and possibly some Boot as gifts, instead waved goodbye as they headed for the door. "We'll be back," they said, almost in unison, tripping in their haste to get out. Lindy squared her shoulders and waved back, knowing it would be futile to try to get the couple to stop. Her own heart was beating pretty fast, though the 3 men in front of her were actually not quite as big as the typical fleshy gas bags she saw in the winery and around the village. "Look, Tom, is it?" Lindy said, making a big show of reading his name tag. "I don't make the rules here, but really, I can't be serving you right at closing time, and if you check that watch again, there's only a couple of minutes before I unlock the door. Sorry, really, another time." Lindy took the bottle of Boot off the bar and turned her back on the 3 men, ducking down below the bar to put the bottle in the cooler where all the tasting bottles were kept. She silently congratulated herself on her diplomacy and was hoping to hear them shuffling towards the door. She fully expected to hear them swear it a few times on their way out, of course. Goddamn gas bags, she thought. But instead, her heart skipped a beat. Hey, Blondie, you're the bitch that threw my friends out last week, weren't you? I can read the next one and you can know what happened if you want. It's going to end okay, maybe. Okay, the next part introduces the winery owner, whose name is Oscar Wilson, but even when he was in junior high school, people underestimated Oscar Wilson. Teased because he was much bigger, including his girth, than all of his classmates, it was only a matter of time before he broke a few noses in schoolyard scuffles. The boys on the east side of Seneca Lake quickly learned that Oscar wasn't really fat at all. He was strong like Polynesians from Samoa or Tonga, where most of the men and women are the size of double-door Kenmore refrigerators. Local legend has it that in high school, a friend was pinned underneath a Volkswagen Beetle when a car jack slipped. Oscar lifted the front end of the car by himself so that his friend could be pulled to safety. Later recountings of the tale had him lifting it with one hand, but Jack Stafford had witnessed it, and it was definitely a two-handed hoist. Oscar was in great demand around harvest time, too, as he could toss bales of hay all day and barely break into a sweat. At this moment in the winery, a tired 55-year-old Oscar was sweating profusely in the back room, getting a shipment of 2 cases of wine ready for pickup, when he heard Lindy shout, "Oscar, front, please, now." Her voice gave off enough strain that Oscar grabbed the short steel pry bar he kept in the back room as he went through the double doors. Daytime robberies of wineries in the Finger Lakes were unheard of. But since the gas companies had started buying up leases and moving in equipment, there had been a rash of nasty vandalism and numerous barroom brawls in the seedier saloons of Watkins Glen, Horseheads, and Elmira. At home and in his pickup truck, Oscar now kept a baseball bat, calling it his Louisville Slugger security system. He made a mental note to put a bat behind the bar in the tasting room. The 3 men at the tasting bar, all wearing Grand Energy Services uniforms, looked surprised when Oscar came out quickly. It was difficult to tell if it was because of his 6'4" height, his solid, if somewhat fleshy build, the pry bar in his left hand, or that he was there at all. What's up, Lindy? These guys want to buy some boot Riesling? None out here? Oscar was about 50 feet from where the 3 men, from the 3 men, when he looked at the pry bar in his hand as if he had forgotten it was there. "Sorry, I was opening some crates in the back," he said, breaking into a big friendly smile for which he was known all around the Finger Lakes. He didn't get any smiles back. The shortest of the men stared malevolently. Lindy said, "I was just telling these boys here that we're closed. It's 6 p.m. Actually 6:02. Huh, look at that. This guy Tom has a great watch, Oscar. You really should look at it. Really cool. But what's really amazing is how well he can tell time." Oscar closed his eyes for a fraction of a second and gripped the pry bar just a little tighter. Then he glared at Lindy for an instant before he spoke. He wondered what in the name of God had happened before he came out. "Gentlemen," Oscar said, "I'm afraid you'll have to come back tomorrow for a tasting or buy a glass of wine or a bottle. I really can't do anything after 6 p.m. except lock the doors. Sorry about that." And for a minute, it looked like that was it. Tom smiled, looking at his watch for a moment as carefully as a child learning to tell time. He even gave a forced smile in Lindy's direction, the kind of smile a fraternity boy makes that's really more a sneer than a smile. But as the 3 men sauntered to the double doors, they stopped while Tom turned and came back, walking up to Lindy at the bar. He spit directly in her face, leaving a big, dripping goober of snot on her left cheek. He turned immediately towards the stunned Oscar, holding his hands high in the air like a suspect in front of a cop. backing away from the bar and moving very quickly. He walked backwards towards the doors where the other two men were already outside and moving quickly to their truck. "You're going to hit me with that pry bar for spitting," he said. "You'll go to jail for that, I promise." Lindy held up her hand towards Oscar before Oscar could move. "Let the little pissant and his gay friends go, Oscar. He's right, you don't need it. I just wished I had served him some wine. His spit smells like he gargles with skunk piss." I have no idea what skunk piss smells like, but it sure seemed like a good image to put with something.
Very swirl-like.
Yeah, I don't know how you swirl it in a wine glass and you see what it smells like.
It smells kind of neat from a distance.
Again, I wanted to thank you all so much for being here. I just wanted to also tell you that the ebook version of the book is available to download. Now we have a code and we can figure out a way to get it to you. I really want to thank again my supporters of the Kickstarter program who put this all together in terms of helping us get it going. For those of you waiting for that print edition, I hope it's out in 8 weeks. Or you might get lucky and get a hold of the manuscript based on the bag that Nico has behind me right here. So let's take a look at that.
You'll make glasses to read it.
Where's Dick Adams? Dick Adams. Okay.
I don't know.
Good.
And when you get done reading it, pass it on.
For those of you waiting for the printed edition, follow him home. Follow him home. I just wanted to say just one more word about it. And that is that people said, well, why did you write this book? People have asked me that. A number of people have said, why did you put yourself through this process? And the reason I put myself through this process is that I have read not all, I've read many of the non-fiction books about hydrofracking. I've read countless articles about hydrofracking. I dream about hydrofracking, unfortunately. And what I discovered is that the world is that those books and these articles and these newspaper articles from Denver, Colorado, and from Louisiana, different places, they're not catching people's imagination. And there is an emotional side to this that Brett Beardsley referred to, and the people side to it that is not captured in normal news reports. And Sandra Steingraber wrote an introduction to this book that shows up on the online version and will be prominently displayed in the print version, in which she, and I'm gonna really blush when I say this, but I will anyway. She compares this book and what I've written to a book called Uncle Tom's Cabin, which you might know, it had a little something to do with Civil War. Also, she compares it to John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath. And for my name to be in the same sentence I was stunned. And what I was really stunned is that she read the book and she got it, because that's exactly why I wrote this book. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope you read it. I hope that you spread the word about the book, and that if you get a copy, whether it's Dick's copy or someone else's, that let people read this book, because I'm hoping it's going to affect people in ways that will help the fight against hydrofracking. Thank you very much.